All right, let's talk about the next thing, animations. So if you click on your avatar, you'll see over here the animator. This will have the actual animation stuff on it. If you do not have that, that's a-okay. You just got to make sure that you have the humanoid on here. Cool. On your FBX. So if you don't know where that is, if you click on your mesh, you can click on the mesh right here. It'll take you over to where the mesh is on that FBX. You can configure the FBX to humanoid. Anyways, cool. So with your mesh, you're going to come over here to the animation window. You're going to click create and it will create a new animation. We're just going to put this under the default. We're just going to call this, SBot, right? Oh, we're going to have to do the actual animation part. So this is the actual animation. So for SBot, let's say, for example, let's do the cutout. So let's change this over to a cutout first real quick. So click on the actual mesh, click the material on it, change it over to cutout. And then from here, we can click record. And it will go down into a default state. And then from here, I will move this over to the first value. Come over here and set the alpha. Click and drag it while it's in recording mode to 0. And so now on the left side, you have on, and then you have off. It will be default. Whatever it was on the default will always be at 0, no matter where you sit over here. And then your next point will be the updates. And these updates will always affect, so if I change other things, like the scale, anything else, you'll see it pop up here on the recording. It's important to turn off recording whenever you just want to preview, and then turn off the preview if you don't need to preview it anymore. Alrighty, so you can do it two ways with your animations. You can either have two animations to where one will just have it off with both of them, or you can have one animation where it's just on off as well. It is up for you. You can make it however you want. I'll go into details about this. Each person has their own different way of making their own animations. For me, I do on off. Everybody, other people might do just on, and another animation for off off. Cool. Now on the animator, you click on your avatar. If this is not popping up on the animator, or if you don't have the animator window, right? Come over here to Windows, Animations. You'll see both the animation window and the animator. They just don't exist down here. I probably should explain that sooner, but whoops, oh well. Alright, so first things first, base layer. Make sure there's nothing's here. I usually go over here and make an empty, so that way the default state goes to nothing. And then you can make as many animations as you want. The reason why we have the animations on the base layer, technically this is going to be inefficient and will create a small hint of lag. But it will allow us, as we make the avatar, to just go over here, hit the tab button right here whenever you click on the avatar. As long as we have the actual FBX, or the animation controller right here, it'll show it right here. So basically, if you don't understand this, if I'm confusing you, there is an animation controller. So whenever you go over here and create an animation controller, these are the controllers. And then inside each animation controller will be the animations. So if you create an animation, and you click and drag these onto the animation controller, it will pop up on those animation controllers. We're just going to delete these for now. Don't worry about that for now. Cool. So now the next thing you're going to do, you're going to hit the plus button, name this whatever you want. Make sure the weight is set to 1. We'll talk about avatar masking here in a little bit. Probably a little bit. We'll talk about it in the future. So now the first thing you need to do is make an empty scene. basically we're just going to make the default entry. Then from here, we're going to go over to different versions. We're going to make a transition. So we're going to right click on the actual, the states, make a transition. We're going to make the two transitions back and forth. Now, the reason why I did this is here's what I'm imagining. So the default entry, this is going to be the logistics work. The animation over here, the animator tour, is the logistics, the way the path flows. So each one of these layers has a point. Let's just call it a point. And that point is going to flow through each one of these lines that we make. Now each one of these lines has a condition, and we're going to make a parameter condition for these. So we're just going to do a bool. So there's different things. There's the integer, the float, and the trigger, and the bool. Bool is just an on-off, a one value. So let's call this invisible. And it can be checked on and off as a default value as well here. An integer is a number, right? And this can go up to 255. A float is a float value, so it starts at 0 and goes all the way to 1. So 0 to 1. So this can be 0.5. This can be 0.5555555. All the way to 556. Yeah, you see, it's a float value, so it's just that decimal place that goes 0 to 1. So if you need things to float smoothly from 0 to 1, so like I need to smoothly fade in, smoothly fade out, that's where that float value can come into play. Alright, for now we're just going to talk about bools, because we just need to worry about that. So invisible, on and off. That's all that we really care about. A toggle on and off. So over here, we're going to change it. So first thing we need to do on these empty states, we need to drag our animation onto here. And we also need to make sure that the loop animation is turned off. The only time you need loop on is for loop animation. So like if I'm shooting an automatic gun and it loops over and over and over and over and over, that's where that loop animation on is working perfectly for you. Other than that, just make sure it's toggled off. Whenever you make a new animation, always check for loop time. Make sure that is always toggled off, unless if you actually need the loop animation. If you don't need it at all, or if you just want to make an animation that loops to itself, you can do this as well with the transitions. Whenever you right click, make transition, and you click on itself, this is transition to itself, and it will just keep on playing over and over and over and over and over, replaying. So imagine like a little line that starts from left and goes to right. It'll play through that animation. So imagine this little thing as it goes right to left, over and over and over and over and over and over. That's what it's doing. Now, on the speed here, I'm going to set this to -1. The reason being is I want this one to be the off, and I want this one to be the on. The reason why I say off and on is for the invisibility. So whenever the invisibility is on, it's going to play the speed as 1. So it's going to start from the left and go to the right. Or if I want it to be off, it'll start from the right and go to the left because it's -1. Now you can cyclic offset, so that's going to be the actual offsets over here. So if you set that to 1, it'll go all the way over here to the 1. Or if you set this to 0.01, the offset, it'll be over here at 0.01. All right. One last thing I'm going to talk about is right defaults. Right defaults. So basically, if you had these checked off, VRChat recommends you to have them off. Now, me personally, I still keep them on because I like right defaults on. Now let's talk about what right defaults is actually. So right defaults. If something is already on, and let's say the animation toggles it off, right? Or it toggles the actual like invisibility, right? If I then go to an animation that's empty, set to none, and right defaults is checked on, it will go back to that default value of being on. Now, if right defaults is off, it will not go back to the default value. It will still keep that animation going throughout the whole thing. Now the problem with this is if you have something super far deep inside the animation, so something all the way down here, and you have different animations that go all the way to here, and you still have write defaults off, the problem is sometimes it gets desync because a new person joins and it doesn't go through this flow chart. It just starts from right here. It's whenever the avatar loads back in. So then it has to go through all that flow again to actually reach that point. Sometimes it could get desynced. So sometimes you might be invisible, but then they don't see it. And it just happens like that. All right. But yeah, write defaults on goes back to whatever it was by default if it's set to nothing. And then write defaults off will keep the actual value if it's set to nothing. Cool. That's the way I like it. I like to go back to default if it's set to nothing. Alrighty, now the transitions. These transitions, if they have an exit time, basically the exit time is going to show, hey, this is how long it's going to take. The transition offset. So if you set this to 1, it'll go through the actual full animation and then go over to the transition duration. So say if you actually wanted to, you could do it like this and it'll float through to the actual second, smoothly over to the second animation. Me personally, it doesn't matter what you set this to. The fixed duration, I set this to either to none. The transition offset, that's basically just the actual offset of it down here. I usually set this to 1. That way it just instantly goes from this one over to the other one instantly. And the interruption source, you can choose these values if you actually want to be interrupting stuff. So say, hey, this animation over here is still playing the actual animation, and I want this animation to finish. So you can say, hey, play this current state, and then play the next state. And if you have this order interruption toggled off, it will play that first state, and then once that's fully done, it'll transition over to the next one, and then play that animation. Toggle it on, it'll interrupt that animation midway through, or however, whenever it was toggled on, or the condition was set true, and it'll just transfer over to whatever it is. But yeah, sometimes you'll notice like, hey, it's interrupting the next phase. That's where these things come into play. Cool. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. Don't need that. I don't need this. I just need transition offset set to 1. So I can instantly go from nothing to something. Now from here, we're going to give it a condition. Whenever the invisible is true, I want it to come over here to on. Whenever the invisible is not true, or not toggled on, I want it to come over here to off. Cool, cool, cool. Alright. So now, let's talk about the actual transitions in between. So with the transitions in between, it doesn't matter about the actual transition time. For this, I usually just set these to 0 and leave it to 0, so that way it just plays this full animation, and then just goes over to the other animation and just plays the other full animation. I don't usually worry about the interruption state. And then from there, I do, since this one's going from off to on, I want the invisible to be true. And then from on to off, I want this to be false. And just turn off the exit time. Bada bing, bada boom. As you notice, the exit time will change the value of when it will transition over. For me, I don't really care. I just want to play the full the animation and then just toggle it off and just go instantly over to the other one. Since it's only less than a second, or a thousandth of a second, or 100th. Sorry, this is 100th of a second. Anyways, but yeah, that's about it. With the actual toggle, this is how you make a toggle. Now, the animation side, the logistics side. So now, basically, it starts from here, goes over to the flow. It'll flow through if it's on or off, and it'll hang out here. And if it changes, it'll go back over to the other sides. Cool. All right, so now let's talk about the VRChat side, the user side. So this is what you see on your side. Now we need the actual VRChat side, what everybody else sees. So the first thing we need is a parameter. So we're going to go over here, right click, create VRChat avatar parameter. And we're going to call this, I don't know, whatever you want to name this, RBot or SBot or whatever. We're just going to name it bot. Now we're just going to add a component. We're going to call this a bool. And make sure the names of these parameters are the same. So I usually just double click here, copy, and just paste it over here. Synced is going to be synced in between the actual FBX and the parameters. Saved is basically, hey, if this already toggled on or toggled off, it will save that value next time you load into the avatar. And then the default is basically, hey, do you want this to be default toggled on or default toggled off whenever you load into the avatar the first time, or if you reset your avatar, it will go back to that default value. Then the last thing you need to do, I noticed a blue thing over here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the preview. You're going to create a VRChat avatar menu, and this is going to be your actual menu. So whenever you see that small circle on your avatar, this is what that menu is. We're just going to call this bot as well. So we're going to add the controller. Actually, first thing we need to do is click and drag both of these onto here. So you got the menu, you got the parameter. Just to make it clear, menu, parameter. Cool. So now you got it over here. We're going to open up the menu. We're going to add a controller. We're going to click and open up the parameters. And it'll show the active, whatever the active avatar is, whatever's parameter value it's using inside that parameter value. It'll show the list of options it has through here. From here, we're going to make this a toggle instead of a button. The button is just on off, right? And I'll show you the details down here if you actually want to read it. But none of you read, so I figured you're watching this video because of that. We're going to call this invisible, and you can set any icon you want, so whatever icon you want through here on the actual menu. Cool, and if you make multiple animations, you can toggle these through, you can set the value of them, you can delete them, and stuff like that. And so now, you practically have it done. You can go to your SDK, and then you can just go over to the builder, and then upload your avatar. It should be set and ready to go. Cool, cool. And if you don't see the SDK, you click VRChat SDK, show control panel, and then you can click build. Now the script down here, the ID will be the actual avatar ID. Whenever you upload a new avatar, there should be nothing in here. Or if you want to overlap this avatar on, or overwrite an avatar to this avatar, you can copy the ID over here. So yeah, that should be it. That's pretty much done with the animations. That's how you need to make your own very intro, how to make your own animation. From here, the potential is limitless. You can change materials, you can set a light, you can do a whole bunch of other things. We'll get into that as we get more advanced. This is more just basics, so just showing you how to make a toggle. One last thing before you upload the avatar, just make sure you toggle the preview off. What most people will do is they will duplicate this avatar, and then on their main avatar that they upload, they just remove the actual controller. That way, they make no mistakes of having the preview on, or also having the base layer have some sort of animation on it that will instantly just play that animation as they change into the model. So if you want to keep it really safe, really simple from you making a stupid mistake, that's just one thing I recommend as well. If you don't want to do it at all, like how I do it, just make sure your preview is toggled off whenever you go to upload it. Small, simple mistake. It happens. But yeah, that's about it.